All kinds of things going on in the world, and we'll definitely be talking about those things and finding out what people's thoughts are around a number of the issues and the things that are taking place in the world. But definitely one of the things that is taking place in the world, and maybe Rick's got some ideas around this, is that there was this award show that was held on last night called the Grammys. And I think it lasted for 3 hours plus. And apparently Taylor Swift announced that she has a new album coming out and all in that space. I think that some people were expecting her to announce the re-release of an old album, and who knows, there might have been some people that were expecting her to announce further information about her relationship with the Kansas City Chief tight end Travis Kelce and seeing where that was going to go and all along those lines. But instead, she just announced about her book and everything in that way. And I did see that Miley Cyrus and Billie Eilish did a performance, and apparently there was an amazing performance with Tracy Chapman and Luke. I'm trying to think of Luke's last name and all along those lines. But that is some of the things that were going on. And of course, Jay-Z got an award that was definitely a good award for him to have. And he was telling people to actually be active and engaged in their community and all along those lines. So there was those things that were taking place. And of course, some people were also paying attention to that weather that was going on in California as well. So we do know that there was some weather in California that was taking place, and the folks were paying attention to that and seeing what was going on there as well. So definitely a lot of things that were happening in that space. And apparently there was a moment, and we might talk about this on World Politics tomorrow, but apparently one of the people that is running for president decided to do something that has boosted the activities sometimes when they have appeared, because Nikki Haley appeared on Saturday Night Live and apparently gave some real jabs at both Trump and Biden for their age, and also made some reference to their ability to think and all along those lines. But yeah, she had some good time with that. And in the last one, before they did the live from Saturday night bit, she kind of played off of that whole mistake that she had made around slavery and the kind of reason behind slavery as well. So yes, she did appear on Saturday Night Live, and I did see the clip after the fact and all along those lines. But I'm very curious to hear what Rick's got to say about that and his thoughts around that. And in terms of more serious issues like what's going on in the world, the UK has joined the US in shooting down dozens of Houthi targets in Yemen. So that is something that is going on, and the US and Britain launched new strikes on Houthi sites in Yemen. So definitely that is something that is going on there in the Middle East. And you know, I was talking about the weather, and there's bad weather in other parts of the world as well, because apparently a forest fire has killed 112 in Chile's worst disaster since the 2010 earthquake. So definitely it looks like those death tolls are rising, and definitely there's even the possibility that arson might have been involved as well. So that is what is taking place in Chile. And then coming back to the Middle East, an Iran-backed group claims strike on a Syria base used by U.S. as Israel and Hamas war fuels a risky tit for tat. So 6 Syrians were killed in an attack on a U.S. base following the weekend strikes. So that is something going on, is that deadly drone attack hits training ground at a Syrian base housing U.S. troops. So yes, the U.S. is definitely getting pulled further and further into these wars. And Zelensky is hinting at a major shakeup of the Ukrainian government. So it looks like there might be some shaking up of the government. And Zelensky says he might replace several Ukraine officials, not just military officials. So there definitely might be some kind of changes going on in that space as well. And the British and Irish governments are playing down Sinn Féin's call for a united Ireland So Northern Ireland has a Catholic prime minister for the first time in history. So Irish and UK leaders are in Belfast to celebrate the end of Northern Ireland's political deadlock. And Blinken has arrived in the Middle East after the latest U.S. strikes, as I mentioned earlier, on the Houthis. So that is something else that is going on as well. So definitely there's a lot of things going on in that way. And the U.S. has strikes on Iranian-backed groups as Israel-Hamas war rages on. So there is a Washington Insider that says the U.S. is just bombing random stuff, doing airstrikes in the Middle East, and the U.S. declines to rule out hitting targets in Iran, according to Jake Sullivan. So that is something else going on. And coming back to the Latin American area, definitely it looks like some people that are saying that this is the world's coolest dictator. I didn't know that there was such a thing, but apparently there is. And El Salvador President Nayib Bukele secures re-election in a landslide win. So apparently he has won, and he's claiming a big election win. But of course, there are troubled count delays results. So it's not just here in the U.S. that we have these count issues and all along those lines. And if you're learning about your SUV, well, they've got issues with SUVs in Paris. So Parisians vote to hit SUVs with parking costs in latest green drive before the Olympics. Because remember, the Olympics are going to be in Paris and all along those lines. So one of the headlines that came out of CNN was SUV non-Marseille. Paris votes to triple parking charges for those hefty cars. So if you got an SUV and you're heading to the Olympics, you might be paying some serious prices and all along those lines. So that is something else that was in the news, and definitely it'll be interesting to see. I don't know. I do have some friends with SUVs and all in that way. So we're going to see if they can get hit with these things. South Dakota governor coming back to the United States. Nome has been banned from tribal reservations over his remarks on U.S. southern border. So the tribe bars South Dakota governor from its land over her border remarks. So definitely that is something else going on. And by the way, I think Kristi Noem is being pitched as one of the people that might be the vice presidential candidate for Donald Trump and all along those lines. So it'll be interesting to see how this all pays out. And apparently a powerful winter storm is pummeling the Golden State. And I do know that that's where Rick is, and they're saying that atmospheric river parks over Southern California, and they're saying that it's posing potential deadly flood threats and all along those lines. So it definitely looks like folks are paying attention to that, just like they are paying attention to what's going on with the border and these governors, because apparently the Texas governor has vowed to expand his border guard presence, defying Biden, and the Louisiana governor has vowed to help Texas with their National Guard troops. So definitely it looks like there might be a whole notion of a civil war if these states keep going after each other and all along those lines. We're going to find out from our legal expert, Nick Alveda, what he thinks about this and all in that way. And the senators have unveiled a $118.28 billion bipartisan bill to overhaul the immigration system. And I'm sure that our good friend David Walker will have some things to say about that, since he's oftentimes paying attention to the economy and what's going on in the economy and all along those lines. So definitely it'll be interesting to see what's going on in that way. And apparently there's some bad news for Biden, because the latest polls from NBC says a 20-point deficit on handling the economy highlights Biden's struggles against Trump. So Joe Biden apparently is facing an uphill battle as new polls reveal less support than all recent presidential incumbents. So it looks like Bidenomics are falling flat with voters as Trump is taking a huge lead in a new poll. But he's also got legal troubles. Trump does, that is, because Trump's legal troubles are at a critical moment with major implications for the 2024 election. So ex-DOJ official says he's now at the freakout stage over one Donald Trump case and everything in that way. So definitely it looks like things are going to go in that space. And looks like there's those whole notion of him getting kicked off of ballots as well. So that's some of the things that are going on. And there's even some people that are saying that the Supreme Court must throw Trump off the 2024 ballot. And I doubt that that will happen. He'll probably still be on the ballot, but who knows what is if that'll be the case or not the case. And the Supreme Court challenge to Trump was filed by a 91-year-old Norma Anderson. We tease Trump for being older and everything. Apparently, there's somebody in a little bit older group that is actually challenging him. So it is a 91-year-old that has brought this whole case up and all along those lines. So, like I said, we're going to get to some other issues as well, including some of these financial issues, because we did see that there is the House tax bill that is out there as well. And apparently it's modest but good. And there are child tax credit expansions, and we'll see who gets the money in that space as well. So, like I said, a lot of things are going on in the world, and we're going to find a number of these things taking place. So I'm going to bring in Nick Palveda and see what he's got to say about all these legal issues. And of course, I've got Rick Rosner over here with out of California. He's dealing with that whole notion of what's going on with the storms and all along those lines. So we do have a number of things taking place in the world and all along those lines. So I guess I'll start with, well, we get to some of the legal issues earlier. But Rick, did you go to the Grammys? Did you see Taylor Swift?
No, I read a little bit about it. I wrote for the Grammys, I don't know, a long time ago, maybe 20 years ago. And I remember it being a very tough room because, those music people, they're certainly not staying up and watching late night shows. They're out late, but they're not, watching, late night TV. So tough room, but Trevor Noah did a really good job, got credit for making Taylor Swift laugh, unlike the host of the Golden Globes.
Yeah, definitely. And along those same lines, and really quickly before we get to some of the more serious issues and everything, I did see, and this is a serious issue, because there have been times that people have used cultural institutions to get their support up. Maybe Biden needs to make a visit, and all along those lines, either to Pod TV or to Saturday Night Live. But Nikki Haley apparently had some good time attacking Mr. Trump on her appearance, and apparently it was a spur of the moment appearance that was on the Saturday Night Live this past weekend, and I did watch the skit and may even bring it up at some point, if not today, later on.
People on Twitter are annoyed. People on Twitter are annoyed for normalizing, for letting her apologize for not saying slavery was a cause of the Civil War, and they remember back in 2016 when presidential candidate Trump hosted an entire episode of SNL and also was treated gently by Jimmy Fallon on Fallon's show. And looking in retrospect, people don't like the way that normalized a candidate that many people would consider extreme.
Well, along those same lines, I'd love to hear
Nick's stuff like this, does matter.
Yeah, and I don't know if Nick was up that late. Like I said, I saw it after the fact.
I don't know what you do about it because it's a TV show. Who can?
Yep. But along those same lines, and one of the things I was curious about from you, Nick, and everything is that I noticed was that she did make a joke that Donald Trump would probably not be up that late because, of course, that show starts at like around 11:30, and she was wondering what his response was going to be on Twitter. And I've not looked on Twitter in the last day or two, but she was thinking that he was going to unleash his viral on her on Twitter after he woke up and realized some of the jokes that she had made, including wonder about his own knowledge and calling both he and Biden
Trump doesn't.
Oh, Rick, it's getting some California weather action out there in LA. Looks like, Mark.
Yeah.
But just to help you out on the Grammys, okay?
Yeah.
I didn't watch the Grammys. I don't watch the Grammys. I don't know any of those musicians. I barely know who Taylor Swift is, literally. If my grandkids didn't mention her, I wouldn't even know where they are. I don't care about their music, and I don't care about them. So if they all showed up here to Raleigh, I could care less. Frankly, I wouldn't know who they are. Now, if all the chess players showed up, I hate to say it, I would know who they all are. Sports figures, yeah, I follow basketball and football. But frankly, I don't follow music at all. So when I was playing trivia with Ken Jennings, there were certain areas he goes, oh, you got to do sports. Okay. I'm weak at sports. That's what Ken said. Ken being weak is still strong. And the only answer I got correct that he didn't when I was on his team was the sport Casey at the bat. But the minute I see a trivia column that goes music, I fold. I have no clue. History, yes, I'm really good at that. But music, zero. Especially modern pop
But
stuff.
Sasha has some knowledge of music. I know he has knowledge of older music and everything, and he probably even
Oh,
knows.
I mean, I like classical music. Okay, okay. What this guy does, Sasha does classical piano. I like. I was at Carnegie Hall yesterday. Love classical music. I was at a piano recital yesterday. Carnegie Hall the day before. Love that stuff. But in terms of all the pop music, I hate it. I won't listen to it. I'll listen to the classical music only. It drives people nuts, but way too bad. I'm an intellectual snob, descendant of the Plantagenet family of kings of England, and just got to deal with it. So no, I didn't watch the Grammys. I won't watch the Grammys. I could care less about the Grammys.
But Sasha, along those same lines, just really quickly, I'm thinking that Sasha may not know who Bad Bunny is. It took me a minute to figure out who Bad Bunny was, and along those lines. But I'm thinking that you do know who Tracy Chapman is, because Tracy Chapman is a popular folk singer, and apparently she did a great job when she teamed up with another folk singer and everything. But am I correct, Sasha? Because I want to say that she comes from
I don't even think
the European theater and everything. But do you know who Tracy Chapman is, and do you like her music? Because it's more of a folky music, but I was wondering because I saw that she did a great performance as well. So are you familiar with Tracy Chapman?
I cannot comment on the music of Tracy Chapman one way or another. And
do you even know who she is, though?
Yeah, I've heard the name here and there, but I never listened to the music.
Yeah,
and,
but can you comment on the music of Rachmaninoff? Let me ask you
that. I'll tell you one thing. The problem with the classical music is that it's all done already. There is no more classical music. Nobody can approach Bach or Rachmaninoff or Tchaikovsky or Wagner or Beethoven or anything close to that. Not even a mile close or 100 miles or 10,000 miles. It's all done. It's all there. So it's just a matter of interpretations. It's a matter of, for example, somebody, Julia Wang, will come with very, very short clothes or whatever her outfit is. And that's all variety in the classical music there is. Now, all I can find any classical music in all beautiful interpretations on YouTube. You can find on YouTube, let's see, Rachmaninoff's Third Piano Concerto, cadenza in the first movement. You can listen to 100 best performers of all time, how they interpret it and which one variations. There's one is a very difficult one that is played. Even Horowitz doesn't play it. And many, Rachmaninoff played the shorter version of its cadenza, and some other pianists like Bronfman, for example, he goes all the way. And it's a brilliant performance, not because he's a better pianist than Horowitz, but because he played it with the Japan Symphony Orchestra. And they had superior equipment to record. And therefore, the cleanness, the brightness of that recording is second to none, which makes, therefore, Bronfman the best performer. But okay, let me just give you my outlook on yesterday's Grammy. You'll be surprised, but I watched it.
Oh, you did? Okay. Yeah, so
now, I want to tell you something that, of course, all this, Taylor Swift and many others who got the awards or so on, that was the least interesting part of the Grammy. What was the most interesting and just fantastic part of the Grammy, and that what makes this Grammy the best in last probably 25, 35 years, it was a live performances of people like, first of all, Stevie Wonder, tribute to Tony Bennett. This is a music second to none. It's just fantastic interpretations, great performance. At the very end, Billy Joel live. You have to see that. I'm not pretending. Of course, he cannot touch Stevie Wonder by any means. and I'm not even trying to. But it was awesome live performance. Anyway, look at it. They were tribute to uh, Johnny Mitchell,
I
and
did
that
see that.
was fantastic performance. There was a Lionel Richie appearance. You mentioned this latest documentary on We Are the World, and I saw the documentary actually on Netflix. This is so great done. It's so well done. It's fantastic. I was surprised actually that I don't remember who. I think Lionel Richie said that when he was Michael um, uh,
Jackson.
yeah, with Michael Jackson. When they started to work on material, so first of all, a melody, and there was a melody was ready well before the words. And they discussed like whom they would invite to participate, and they decided that this is predominantly black project, and therefore white people wouldn't even participate because why would they care about some Africa issues? And it was not paid project and so on. So but when the project started to blossom and when it started to make some noises, so to speak, more and more white performers were very interested to participate. And you remember there were several great white performers, including Cyndi Lauper at the time. She was very popular, and Kenny Rogers was there. A lot of well-known people, and it became kind of a worldwide event when really it didn't really matter you're white or you're black or you're whatever. It just didn't matter at the end of the day when you heard this performance from the beginning to the end. This is really awesome.
And there was a lot of those kind of justice songs that were out there. There was "We Are the World." There was "Farm Aid." There was a number of songs like that that were in the '80s and that time frame. And there are still some that are out there now. One of the things that I did not know, Sasha, and I was watching some of the awards that were presented not on air but off the air. But apparently, and Rick, I don't know if Rick knows this, but there is a category for social justice. So there's literally a category where they give a award for somebody that is doing something in the social justice field. It is an entire separate category. And I did see that one of my favorite blues artists, Bobby Rush, got another Grammy, and all along those lines in the blues category. But I was somewhat surprised, but not overly surprised, that there was a category strictly for social justice. And so somebody got a Grammy for the music that was espousing some sort of social justice opinion of some sort or another. But
Now,
it
let me
is
tell you something else. What I observed is, sorry, Marco, I was watching all these performers, starting from, of course, you cannot dismiss, as I said before, well, Taylor Swift, of course. She was kind of a star of a show. At least she was shown much more than others. Then, of course, I would mention Stevie Wonder, by all means, but several others. And I couldn't identify any person who would eventually vote for Trump. I just couldn't see one. So if you will take this and you will take the major sport figures, each one with millions, if not 100 millions of followers, I just can't believe how some people believe, even here on our panel, that Trump could win election.
well, he's definitely still ahead, unfortunately, and all along those lines. But we'll see what Jacoby got to say, and maybe he watched the Grammys and everything. I did see that there was a notion that a star that I enjoy, and she is a great drummer, and I'm just going to say this on air because I've said it before and everything. I might have a slight crush on her as well, but apparently the only reason that Sheila E. was invited to We Are the World, which is this documentary and everything, is because they were trying to lure Prince, and apparently Prince wasn't having it. Prince did not want to be part of this. So Michael Jackson was there, but Prince was not there, and they did not have an opportunity to lure Prince, even though that was the only reason apparently for bringing Sheila E. into it, is they were hoping that their relationship and their friendship would talk people into getting him there, since they were definitely connected at the hip in some ways and all along those lines. But Jacoby, we're talking about the Grammys, and I was wondering, did you watch the Grammys and did you see the Tracy Chapman performance and all along those lines? The other thing I was going to say just really quickly as a side is that I'm a big fan, and I don't know that Sasha is, but I like it when sometimes musicians blend styles. Like there's a popular chamber orchestra here called Mallarmé, and they will sometimes do the traditional chamber music, but they will also incorporate like music from Vietnam or music from Asia or music from Africa. A popular classical composer that is an American classical composer that people sometimes forget, even though I consider him a great one, and I don't know whether Sasha enjoys him or not, or if he's even familiar with the music of William Grant Still. But I'm actually a big fan of the music of William Grant Still, who is a more contemporary classical musician, but he's definitely in the classical space and all along those lines, and is an African-American composer. But Jacoby, did you get a chance to watch the Grammys and all along those lines?
Nope, didn't watch the Grammys. Didn't take time to watch. There was other stuff on TV. I'll read about the Grammys today, but yeah, no, I didn't watch it. The only thing, I mean, I heard the big buzz about Killer Mike getting arrested. I don't know why he got arrested. And I don't think it was anything of his doing, but yes, he got arrested at the Grammys for some reason. I heard
like they literally came and the police got him at the Grammys.
Yes, the police got he got arrested at the Grammys. We're trying to figure out why, but yeah, he got arrested at the Grammys. I've heard, Jay-Z had a long speach at the Grammys.
I did. I watched that speech.
And then Taylor Swift won historic album of the year, the fourth time in a row or something like that. So, I mean, there's some neat things that happened at the Grammys, and I saw a few things, but no, I didn't watch it. I decided I wanted to watch other stuff.
It makes a lot of sense, and that's a good way to handle it. I want to get back to something else on the news.
Rick
and we'll get to a couple of other news things as well, but definitely I saw that we still got it. He's been popping in and out and all along.
Yeah, because of the rain. Sorry about that. It keeps knocking my.
Yeah, we still got Rick with us and all on those lines. So I wanted to hear about this lovely weather that y'all are having, because apparently there is a major power outage over there in California with affecting over 400,000 homes and businesses, and apparently there seems to be blackouts in Sacramento County, and thousands are without power in Butte, Glenn, and Tahoma counties after strong storms. So it seems like y'all having some very serious weather. And I was talking to a friend of mine from California, and they were even saying y'all were dealing with mudslides and everything. So definitely give us a little bit of a weather update, because it does seem like there's some crazy weather coming out of California.
This might be the biggest storm in decades, according to some people. But, our weather's all getting messed with by climate change anyway. So I don't know. But anyway, yeah, I was out in the streets and they're all flooded. And, I felt a little lucky to get home, because people drive through those puddles that look like they're 6 inches deep and they're 3 feet deep, and then you're screwed. So, but we're okay, except for I've got crappy internet right now. I wanted to get back to Sasha talked about classical music versus modern music. And I have a theory that over time, especially recently, people move towards forms of entertainment that have more and more information. And I would argue that rap music is the most rapid fire, high information form of music in history. When you look at TV shows and movies, especially superhero movies, like, the Marvel movies where you had 30 superheroes fighting, what's his name, who killed everybody. When you Thanos. That movie would have been impossible for somebody in the 1980s to follow, because there are so many characters and everything happens so fast that we've been trained ever since MTV came on with rapid fire videos 40 years ago. We're now like just addicted to pow, 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 rapid fire stuff. And I would argue that rap music is super rapid fire and takes its
Not only is it rapid fire, and Jacoby, I'd love to hear your thoughts around this, but there are a number of people that have said that historically speaking, blues was kind of the news of the community, and that definitely over the last 50 years of rap music being out there, that it is definitely a form of the news getting out there. There have been a number of songs, including songs about political figures and political causes that come out of the rap world. So a lot of people would say that it is a more accurate representation of the news than even some of the news stations, including the historically black press and all along those lines. So there have been a number of people that have seen, whether it's around police violence or around other important issues, the rappers are the ones that are actually playing the role of the journalist and all along those lines. At least that's what I have observed, and others have observed it as well as the people in spoken word. But Jacoby, your thoughts around that? Because I've heard this argument for a number of years that journalists are not doing as much of as great a job of being journalists as the rappers are, and that it is the music of the streets, but it is also the news of the streets.
Well, that depends on which type of rap you're talking about, because just like every music genre, rap is evolving. It's still a very young genre of music. I mean, think about it. The Beatniks were not that old, and that's where rap began. And then you have the way it split off, and you have the more commercialized rap, and then you have still the rap where it kind of originated. The hip hop, where it originated in the streets, telling the story of the streets, from Stetsasonics to KRS-Ones. But then, you got Migos, who's different. Who's a different genre. They're not talking about what's going on in the streets. They're still talking about what they're doing. So it's just genres of music and how genres evolve. R&B evolved. R&B, now you got neo soul. Neo soul started back when it split off with Erykah Badu and D'Angelo, and then Kim came in, and then some of the others, and what neo soul talks about in comparison to what R&B talks about. That's the same way that rap is dividing up. And classical music has been used to help individuals' brains. They said that there were studies that helped individuals with brain growth or memory growth or something. I got to remember the story. It's been a while since I read about it, but
I've heard that story and everything, and I can't remember who did it either. Going back to some of the news issues just really quickly and all along those lines, because Sasha kind of alluded to it earlier, and I definitely want to hear something in terms of one of the things that's going on the foreign level and all in that space. But there is a number of people that are concerned about this major deficit that is out there, because apparently there is a 20-point deficit between Biden and the whole notion of the handling of the economy. So a lot of people are saying that Biden is facing an uphill battle, as new poll is revealing less support than all recent presidential incumbents. So I've heard this from a couple of sources and everything. So while I agree that if he can stick on issue that Biden should win and Trump got all these legal troubles, it does seem a lot of people are paying attention to the economic issues. And therefore, there is some concern, and even in Democratic camps, about Biden's future as an incumbent. So I'd love to hear from Sasha, but I'd love to hear from everybody else as to how we can get past this and whether this is going to be a legitimate concern. Because I hear what you said, Sasha, that you don't see how Trump can win and everything, but all the polls are showing that it is definitely some problematic things in terms of the messaging. And I know both Jacoby and even to some degree Nick, and definitely Steve, when he's on here, talks about messaging, as does Kelly. And I don't know that the messaging is getting through. So y'all's talked around this, because a lot of people are concerned, and I know we got several months to go because it's only February and the elections are in November, but definitely the concern is out there in the Democratic camps. But y'all's thoughts?
My thoughts are very simple. It's too early in a cycle to start promoting the Biden's achievements in economics or elsewhere, because it will be all lost by November. So you might as well start it probably in June, maybe July, not before that. But people who have ability to think for themselves and see the latest figures, they can understand that the economy is booming. There's a great corporate profits. Reports are one better than the other one, and wait until interest rates will start go down. It's being delayed now. It's not going to happen in March, as we're told, although everything is possible. Most likely it will be probably around summertime, but it will be this year. Most likely 95% of people who follow the markets believe that there will be interest rates cuts later this year. So at that point, when interest rate will start going down, then the mortgages will start going down, the loans and everything else, because economy is doing just greatly. Now, another thing is that the Republicans are trying to picture economies that's going nowhere, that people are doing not so well, and so on. So that is okay. You can elect to fight these messages and explain why they're wrong and the economy is doing so well, and so on. But now it's too early for that. Wait until May, July, June, July.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense and everything. Hey, Jacoby, one of the things that took place, because definitely there was an overwhelming victory in the South Carolina primary for Trump and everything, and definitely it looks like he is. I mean, for Biden, I should say, because the other one has still got to go on. But Biden is now speaking and trying to address the things that he's done for our community, meaning the African American community. And apparently he spoke at a community center in the historic West Side neighborhood of Las Vegas. And he rattled off statistics about reductions in child poverty that have taken place and a number of other things. He talked about his growth in minority-owned businesses, and he attacked former President Donald Trump for saying that immigration was poisoning the blood of the United States. So just wondering your thoughts around this and whether any of these things that are in this lane will help in terms of getting Biden that traction that I was just talking about. Because like I said, he was recently in that whole area of Vegas, and definitely he's been working to shore up his support among the African American and Hispanic voters who definitely make up a key constituency. And definitely it seems like Donald Trump is trying to make inroads in those groups. And I was actually watching a talk, it might have been on CNN, where there was like one of those like coffee barbershop conversations, and there was a number of gentlemen that were saying that they didn't think that they would vote for Donald Trump, but they had friends of theirs that would vote for Donald Trump. They were in the African American community, and they also had friends of theirs that were looking at Cornel West and Manchin and some of these other third-party candidates and all along those lines. So at some point in this week, I may play that tape and all along those lines. But it was an interesting coffee table type conversation and everything. But I just wondered your thoughts around this attempt to get shore up this part of the constituency.
Oh, I was curious where Rick was about to go, because Rick had something he was going to pop in. I mean, I can jump back in on that part just afterwards. But yeah, Rick, I think he had something good that he wanted to drop in.
Well,
Yeah,
I mean, it's frustrating for Democrats to see Democratic leaders lean back. It's tempting for the Democrats to lean back and let Trump own the spotlight and the Republicans own the spotlight and do terrible things and say awful things and think that reasonable people, won't vote for such a scumbag as Trump, which might be true, but I would like, as we get closer, as Sasha said, we got 9 months to go till the general. And a lot of people don't start paying attention till 6 months or 5 months or till after the primaries in June. I mean, after the conventions in June. But the Democrats need stronger messaging. And I want to talk about the age of the candidates. Mm-hmm. The Social Security Administration has a lifespan calculator where you can plug in somebody's age and see how much longer they're expected to live. And you punch in Biden, and according to the government, his average future lifespan is 8.2 years. And I'd argue that it's probably even longer because he doesn't have any major health issues that we know of, and he's in good shape. He's slender. Now, Trump Actually, Trump has lost a bunch of weight if you look at him, because he's been obviously feels terrible about what's going on with him legally. And he doesn't know how to put on his makeup anymore, but he actually looks more slender. So he's got an expected lifespan of another 10 years or more. Each side says the other side's candidate has dementia. That's probably bullshit in each case. But in terms of the candidate surviving through the election, odds are, 99% or more.
Yeah, but along those same lines, speaking about age, I mentioned earlier, there is a woman that is not a spring chicken. She's literally 91 years old. And Norma Anderson left the Colorado legislature nearly 2 decades ago, but she still keeps a copy of the state statutes in her home office. And apparently she carries a pocket constitution in her purse, and she has another copy slightly larger with images of the founding fathers on the cover that she leaves on a table in her sitting room, according to some news reports from the Washington Post and everything. So she is the one that is the unlikely face of the challenge to Trump's campaign that will be heard in the Supreme Court on Thursday. So she was a force in Colorado politics for decades, serving as the first female majority leader in both chambers of that legislature. And she's a Republican, but has long been skeptical of Trump and believes he is an insurrectionist who crossed a verboten line on January 6th that should bar him from holding office again. So she says,
I come from good Colorado Republicans. I grew up in Boulder, Colorado.
Right.
My parents were Republicans of the old style.
Right.
My mom was lived long enough to see Trump and lived long enough to quit voting for Republicans with Trump. And, there are plenty of decent Republicans in the country. Trump has underperformed his polling in the Iowa caucuses and in New Hampshire. The polls are a little bit captured by lunatics. And it'll be interesting to see if Trump keeps doing worse than polls say he will, because my argument is that you can't trust it's harder and harder to trust the polls, because it's harder and harder to get non-crazy people to take political surveys.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that Nick will pop back on, since he's our legal expert, or one of them, and everything. But she did say he tried to overturn an election. She said, the very first time I ever ran, I didn't win. I didn't go out and try to change the election. I said, whoops, work harder next time, lady, and all along those lines. So I'm just wondering, are folks going to think that these cases, because Colorado's not the only one, there's Maine and there's some other ones that are in the works. So of the 50 states, will Trump be off of the ballot in maybe about 10 to 15 of those, which would definitely impact the
Probably
election?
not. And the states in which he's off the ballot, he was going to be unlikely to win anyway. But I want to talk about Biden's pivot in the 90s. When Clinton was president, he was getting attacked by Newt Gingrich, and he pivoted way right. He started, attacking. He started saying more people needed to be imprisoned. He reformed the welfare system. So he moved right, and he squeezed out there's always room for, given how right wing the fanatical Republicans are, there's always room for a Democrat to move right and take away some of their territory. And Biden is doing this right now with immigration. After 3 years of kind of leaning back on immigration, now he's pushing for immigration reform and getting tough on immigration, and he's taking away one of the Republicans' main running points.
But speaking of moving right in along those same lines, there is still criticism, and I don't know if Jacoby's got some thoughts about this, or even you, Rick, because you're there in California. There is still criticism of the current vice president and all in that space because of her rules and some of the things that she did in terms of the crime bills. And there's even been criticism of Biden and some of his get tough on crime stuff that he did in the past, even in the African American and Latin American communities as well. So I just wanted y'all's take on that, because I'm sure that is one of the things that the Republicans will try to push back on, is this notion that they were overly tough on crime, and that they punished a number of folks, including those in the African American and other communities as well, because of some of the national rules that Biden was the architect of, and all along those lines, and then some of the things that Kamala did when she was in California. But I just wanted y'all's takes on that. Anyway,
Toby.
In terms of the Biden's positions, or I mean,
yeah, the Biden's positions, and there's been some criticism because of some of the.
So you got this is what makes no sense in terms of the if you actually
bills when he was in
messaging.
Congress, and definitely there's been criticism of Kamala because of some of the things she did when she is a DA.
So this is the if you truly listen to the messaging of the Republican Party, and this is one of the criticisms. Well, a big criticism that comes out of it is that the Democrat Party is too weak on crime. Biden is weak on crime. Democrat cities are overrun with crime. Yet in the Democrat Party, people complain that Kamala Harris was a little too tough on crime due to her stances in California and her being the DA and this and that and the other thing. So it's just every complaint that they have, like Biden, Sleepy Joe, Biden doesn't do anything. Biden is feeble and weak. Yet Biden ran a criminal organization that is stealing money from the government, and he did all this. And so it's just these complaints that come from different areas. Like, I don't think that the Democrat Party or Joe Biden, because I agree with Sasha a little bit that the messaging itself will kick in once the actual primaries start to happen. We're hitting home on the economy, because it will get lost in the shuffle right now. Because right now the big argument is the immigration. And since immigration is that big argument in the room and swallowing everything in terms of it's swallowing all the air in the room, that and Donald Trump. And with throwing in the economy and all the accomplishments on the economy, that'll just go by the wayside, and people won't even listen to it or even acknowledge it at this moment just because of what's going on. So, I mean, Sasha, I agree with that, yeah, I mean, the economy portion, that right now can start hitting a little bit later, because people are going to forget about it, because all they're going to think about is what's going on with this immigration. If the immigration bill passes, I mean, I think Biden has a good chance to really push through and make some headway on a lot of things in a lot of people's minds. But
you are aware that Republicans with Mike Johnson, they're trying to do everything to derail this bill. So let's assume that it's not going to pass. So then Biden will have a Trump in his sleeve saying that we tried everything possible and impossible to pass it, and the Republican derailed this bill. So we don't have a mechanism unless you march in and arrest all the House Republicans and throw them to jail. You don't have any legitimate way to pass this bill. So what can you do about it?
So right now you can see what the Republican response to that is. And that's what they're floating out right now. And that's why I think the Democrat Party has to get ahead of it and grab what they're trying to run, because they're floating the idea that Biden has already had all the power that he needs. He doesn't need to do this. He can do it by executive order and all that. But all that's just a complete farce, because if he had the power to do it, Trump had the power to do it. And Trump didn't stop the spike that happened in 2019, didn't stop the spike that was happening at the beginning of 2020. What stopped the spike mainly was COVID, because you had the COVID restrictions that kicked in and shut down the whole world. Therefore, nobody was moving. The border wasn't moving. You had production. I mean, it just really had a damper on everything.
But let me ask you, even if he has executive power to do that, he doesn't have financial means to accomplish it, because without Congress, he can get the financial means. So that means really nothing, all his executive power. He may try to implement it here and there, but it's not going to work anyway. And another thing is, as much as Republicans are saying that this is the biggest issue now, it's immigration. Okay, how does really immigration affects most of American people? People, okay, in Texas on the border, maybe it does affect them more than any other states. But what's the other states? Let's see if you're talking about Wisconsin, or you're talking about um, even like Nevada, or you're talking about just average U.S. states. How much are they affected by this immigration problem? I bet they are not affected at all. That's only bombardment from the Republican sources saying, "Oh my God, the country is awash with illegal immigrants, and there is a crime, and there is this and that." I don't understand why people would pay any attention to that. It's a bogus claim.
Yeah,
You have to really want to believe those arguments to buy them. We're about 4% undocumented immigrants. Statistically, undocumented people are more law-abiding than the native-born people, and you can see it driving around LA. If you're behind somebody who's going 15 miles under the speed limit, and then you're like, what's the deal? They're either really old, or you get next to them and they're Mexican. They're undocumented, and they don't want to get they don't want to get pulled over. And so
maybe they even don't have a driver's license.
Yeah, but I mean, they don't. Like, we were at 3.7% unemployment. It's not like illegal undocumented people are taking all the jobs. We've got, everybody's employed.
And that's exactly what Sasha, what you're talking about. Because we all know that they're not taking the jobs, but the political talking point that's being pushed out there, because truthfully, okay, it may burden a state in terms of financing, in terms of finding solutions to where these individuals need housing, or translate just some extra services. However, those are job opportunities. If we turned around and invested money in these services that could help the undocumented immigrants get jobs and put in positions where they can continue to add money to our society, those are jobs. Those are things that we're begging for, that we need to actually fill. But nobody wants to fill them because we demonize these people, and we demonize them to a point where you've got Greg Abbott talking about he wishes he could shoot them, and he's happy throwing the stuff in the water so they can die. He has his own people in Texas okay with the 3 people who died right there in front of them. It's just one of those things where they demonize the undocumented worker instead of, hey, this individual, just like other undocumented immigrants that come to our country, have brought.
Hey, Jacoby, along those same lines and everything, just out of curiosity, are you concerned, or anybody else on the panel concerned, and I brought it up a couple of times, and I mentioned it on the news earlier, that Louisiana is coming to Texas's defense, and there are a number of these other Republican states that are coming to Texas's defense as well, and even I believe Nikki Haley said it was all right, even though she's backpedaling and from that statement, that it was all right for them to secede. So do we think that any of these states, just like I mentioned on the other Supreme Court issue, will ever secede? And even though it's 2024, will we have some variation of a civil war?
It's dumb. This is another dumb Republican talking point that plays into the fear and the angst and the individual of their base, of that MAGA base. Oh, we can secede. So why are we the United States? If you're united, then why are you arguing that you want to secede? Then you're a separate country. Therefore, you're not a United State. Then, and that's what Nikki Haley was. The funny thing is, she went on. I think it was it was State of the Union with Dana Bash, and she got asked that question about, you said that you believe that they can secede. Then she turned around, no, it's illegal for them to. So you just change your position right there, knowing that you played to your base here, but then came on TV and tried to tell the truth because you were in front of somebody who's going to question you. So That's her same thing with the whole slavery comment. But that's what the GOP, that's what the Republican Party's messaging does, is they play to their base, and they'll lie in a heartbeat just to get their base to cheer them on.
Yeah, they definitely do that and everything. Just really quickly, because we only got a few more minutes to go and along those lines, but I did want to get to another story that was in the news, and it was one that I was going to hear from Sasha's opinion. I know he'll probably deal with it on tomorrow in even more detail, but just really quickly, Sasha, is there any concern from what you're hearing in terms of Ukraine with this shakeup of the administration and all along those lines? Because I definitely heard Zelensky is thinking about not just letting go of some of the military people, but even letting go of some of the other workers. So there may be a shakeup in the Ukrainian government. But I was just wondering your take on that. And like I said, I know you and Jonathan Lockhart and even Ivan will probably touch on it in greater detail on tomorrow, and we can touch on greater detail in tomorrow as well. But just as we wrap up, I'd love to hear your thoughts, because that was something that was a question that was appearing in my mind as I was reading that earlier.
Well, I think that generally frustration is growing in top officials of Ukraine. See, the thing is that there were a lot of talk of the Ukraine going to attack in the last several months. And that was based, and the strategy of General Zaluzhny was based on the promised weapons from the West, particularly the United States. That his strategy was built on that. When he started to realize that the help will be either late or maybe even never materialized, particularly in that particular 2023, he drastically changed the strategy, because the only real asset that Ukraine has, it's in its army. And he decided to preserve the army as much as possible. So therefore, he refused to go all the way to attack Russian positions, which were heavily fortified, because by the late 22, when Ukraine got very successfully on the offensive, and they took over control over Kharkiv and Kherson on south, and they could continue on early 2023, and U.S. started to hatch its bets, or I don't know how you would properly call it, and they started to delay even this weapons that finally reached Ukraine, but they were delayed. There were much fewer weapons delivered than promised, and that's where Russians got the powers to fortify all their lines, defensive lines, on the south of Ukraine and in east. And when the Ukrainians were trying to start this, launch this attack in around June of 23, they realized that the fortifications that Russians built are almost impregnable. Even NATO army or even US army, I don't think they would have a lot of success against it, especially without aviation. With aviation, maybe it's a different story, but without aviation, obviously, there was no way that Ukraine could go through without losing probably most of its force. So Zaluzhny stopped that, and he preserved the army. So there are still possibility, especially now that European Union approved 50 billion euros help to Ukraine. Situation with Washington is still unclear, but it seems to me that majority of Americans support the Ukrainians' fight, and even in the Congress, most of the congressmen want to support Ukraine, but through actions of Trump and his little toy Mike Johnson, nothing much really happens, unfortunately.
I wanted to go back to Civil War for a second.
Yeah,
So the people screaming for civil war are idiots and lunatics. We have a bunch of nice stuff, and everybody has nice stuff. And when you look at what the the first Civil War in 1860s, it wrecked everything. We've got a movie, a big budget movie coming out that might be called Civil War, but it's about a modern civil war in the U.S. And I think it'll underline the destruction of, nobody reasonable wants it. It's just that in social media, the craziest voices are also the loudest. And I think that all this talk serves to disgust more people than it does draw in most people.
I definitely agree with you on that and everything. I know we got the economic show getting ready to start very shortly as well. I mean, tomorrow we might touch base some more on some of the other things that are going on, including the expanded conflict in the Middle East and all along those lines. But definitely appreciate y'all as always. And I know we're going to jump off to the Economics Monday show and all along those lines. I think David Walker may be there, and we may be talking about financial issues, of course, as we oftentimes do. And I think this time it might even be dealing with education and the finances around education and all along those lines. But definitely looking forward to seeing y'all over there. And of course, we'll be back here on tomorrow. And of course, definitely looking forward to hearing what Sasha has to say about even further details around Ukraine with Jonathan and with Ivan. I know Ivan wasn't there this past Friday, but we're hoping that he'll be back on this coming Tuesday because he always gives some great insights and has those amazing videos. So right now, we're going to get on out of here, and we'll see y'all on the Economic Show.
Bye-bye.
All right.